On May 30th, I've been flying FPV for 8 years. And the reason I know the exact date is because I uploaded my first YouTube video the day that I got my first FPV drone. I didn't even have goggles yet, but I was so excited to learn how to fly. I had my buddy go out and film me flying at line of sight. And boy, oh boy, has a lot changed in those 8 years. The rise of FPV cinematographers, most of the components getting really good, FPV YouTubers that have come and gone, and Rotor Riot is now owned by a defense contractor. A lot has changed, some for good, some for bad, but FPV remains one of the funnest hobbies I've ever been a part of. So for my 8-year anniversary, I thought it'd be fun to take a look back on not only my history in the hobby, but a little bit of FPV history as a whole. The ZMR250 is one of the most popular frames in 2016, and back then I saw buying it fly on eBay. When it arrived, all 4 of the single ESCs are mounted directly on the bottom of the frame, and it had a power distribution board that ran the length of it. Not really the most ideal setup. Even my inexperienced ass knew that was not the right way to mount electronics. I'd been obsessed with FPV videos for a week up until this point, and I knew that was not where things go. I didn't know how to solder at all. I went to Home Depot, I bought some plumbing solder and a heated Weller stick, but I rerouted the ESCs to the arms like I'd seen in all the YouTube videos and got them up off the bottom of the quad. I had never soldered anything before, so this was a major learning experience, but it felt pretty accomplished doing it. A few weeks later, my Quantum V2 goggles arrived in the mail, and I happened to find a dollar store action camera in a dumpster, so now we got HD video on board. And from then it was on. All I did was fly FPV, literally. I was still drinking and partying and like doing a little bit of pills back then. So when I would get invited to a punk show or to a party and I'd be like, nah homies, I'm actually gonna go to the park and practice this little drone thing, people would be like, who are you? I don't know who you are. What do you mean? It was pretty out of character for me to pass up a good punk show or a party or something like that. But I was serious. I was in love. I was obsessed with this hobby and I wanted to make a career out of it. I did that for about another year, and then something kind of cool happened. About a year into my career, Mike Chin mentioned my name on the FPV Life podcast. It was called FPV Life. It has nothing to do with the toxic Facebook group that I see screenshots of. This was its own thing. But when Mike Chin said my name and people were nodding their heads, I was like, oh shit, these people know who I am now. I was a regular on the old FPV show with Gap It, but I would just call in blacked out drunk and mumble gibberish and they'd laugh at me. So a few people from there knew who I was, but not in the best regard. It wasn't too long after this, I got invited to film with the old original Rotor Riot, including people like Stinger, Swarm, and Umagod. I was never the best pilot, but I put out consistent content and people seemed to enjoy my videos, so I just kept making them. And when I started FPV, it was pretty much full of New Balance dads and college kids, so when my crust punk ass came onto the scene, people had a hissy. People freaked the f out when I started making videos. I was a drug addict, I was gonna ruin the hobby, I was all kinds of things, man. I flew in an abandoned cemetery next to my house frequently, and back then that was just about the worst thing you could do, according to the Facebook warriors. But in the real world, I was getting invites left and right from YouTube channels, well-known FPV pilots. I was going on mad trips, having a great time. I flew in my first airplane because of FPV, and therefore had my first panic attack as a result. I had made videos and hung out with most of the well-known pilots at this point. I was filming kind of regularly with Rotor Riot, traveling around the country doing my thing. I had amassed a few sponsors at this point, which for me was a game changer because I wasn't making no money. I was still hustling for a living, so getting free frames and electronics was huge. About a year or so after that, I made my first signature frame with BQE, the Bot 5, and my first motor, the Grinder V1. I cannot tell you how amazing this felt. As somebody who skated pretty much their whole life and always dreamt of like a skateboarding sponsorship, this was the closest thing that I was going to get in my late 30s. Around this time, FPV culture was starting to kind of take shape. You had your main crew like AMA grandpas, but at this time there's also counterculture starting to brew. People that didn't care about precise tuning or saving weight or getting the absolute highest quality video feed. We just wanted to go hang out in abandoned buildings, smoke weed, and rip some fucking quads. Now I'm lucky enough to live in Philadelphia where we have these massive buildings that have been abandoned for 20+ years, and the police here don't give a shit what you're doing unless like several people call to complain, and even then it's gonna be hours until they show up. So a couple nerds flying toy helicopters at an abandoned building is pretty low on the list of calls you're gonna get that day. Probably won't even respond. I was starting to make a name for myself in the community at this point. I was really active. I would leave comments on every single YouTube video just so people would see my name and know that I was a thing. I was always posting, leaving replies to questions on Reddit and the other groups, the Slack and stuff, trying to help people because I had mastered, a little bit of knowledge at this point. I came into FPV knowing nothing and asking a ton of questions. So once I learned how things work and I saw other people with those same questions, I think it's your duty to respond to those and to help people out. If you've been helped in FPV and you can help somebody else out, it's your duty now. Circle of FPV Life. Between 2016 and 2018, there is not one FPV video without my name on it, without me leaving a comment or saying something somewhere. And this is all part of my strategy. I wanted people to know who I was. I was serious about making a name for myself in FPV. And being a foul-mouthed, face-tattooed punk definitely helped, and it helped me attract the right people. Speaking of that, the next few years I spent pretty much just trying to like find my style, find my place within the FPV YouTube scene. I'm pretty much the opposite of a capitalist, so my intentions were never to get super rich doing this. I'd be happy if I just made minimum wage doing FPV instead of, you know, cooking at a restaurant or something. I worked for Quadbox for a while. It was a subscription box of FPV stuff that you get in the mail. It was me and one other dude. It was through Rotor Riot, and we did pretty well together, you know what I mean? I started off at I think $500 a month. I was doing some performance-based pay bullshit. It was like, how if the company did better, you did better. So I worked my fucking ass off for that shit, man. And I ended there before I got fired. I was making 2,000 bucks a month, which was the most I've ever made in my life. It was sick. On my videos, I did experiment with some affiliate links, but honestly, you get 5% from these companies, which ain't shit unless you're like Joshua Bardwell. I never really did ads. I've always hated ads. Sometimes I did those little like square ones that you can click off, but that's bullshit. Fuck ads. So when I left my job at Quadbox, I was kind of stuck on what to do. I do have to say a huge shout out to Trappy from TBS Team Black Sheep. When I lost my job at Quadbox, Trappy was like, fuck that, dude. I'm going to pay you your salary that they were giving you for nothing, just until you can get back on your feet, just so you don't have to worry about losing any money. 2,000 bucks a month. And he did that for a couple months, dude. Trappy is a fucking G. Nobody's ever done some shit like that for me, man. Knowing that Trappy had my back made me think like, okay, maybe FPV is viable for me. Maybe I should continue doing this and I'll just give up because I lost my stupid Quadbox job, which was never really a thought, but you know, having Trappy have my back made it even easier. So instead of having to scramble to fill out applications for a line cook, I started my Patreon. And that, as you may or may not know, is like 99% of my income. I pretty much just do Patreon. That's why I don't do ads or affiliate links or bullshit like that. Up until this point, I was mainly like a vlogger. That was the meta in FPV. You didn't have many review channels or product showcase channels or whatever the hell your kids are calling ads these days. You had people that flew FPV and made videos, and once in a while, a company would send them a product, so they'd make a little video about what they thought about it. Usually pretty critical too, because they weren't scared of not getting more free products. I was never really good at these videos. I'm still not, but companies started sending me stuff to play with and make videos about. I, being a ding dong, never took these serious at all and always made brutally honest, perhaps even like too brutal of videos on stuff. I didn't want to seem like, you know, I was praising this company just because they sent me something for free. Emacs, I may have been a little harsh on. I apologize, Emacs. I do enjoy your products. In my mind, most people just made these videos so they can, you know, puff up their affiliate links or get more free stuff from companies, and I never wanted to be that guy. And I think that helped people in the early days relate to me, you know what I mean? Because I wasn't just trying to hype something up and sell them some product so I can make affiliate commissions. I hear people pretty often say Bachgrinder doesn't give a fuck, and while that's partly true, I don't give a fuck about dumb shit. I certainly have very deep convictions about some things, but I try not to sweat the small stuff, you know, what some no-name hater thinks, or if some multi-million-dollar company is mad at me for honestly reviewing a product. For me, there's just larger things in life to worry about than all of that. So now we're about 4 years into when I started FPV. I'm doing it full-time for a living. I'm making about 500 bucks a month on Patreon, but I own my house, I have an EBT card, and I have sponsors, so I'm doing pretty damn well. I think this is about the time when I saw FPV really start to take off. It always seemed like there was a lot of people flying FPV, but you know, I was so immersed and just obsessed with the hobby, it was kind of hard to see anything else. I went to my first International Open, the first Rotor Riot Rampage, and several smaller events. I was like, wow, man, these little flying robots are really catching on. There's people from literally all walks of life enjoying this at these things. It really felt like we were something new and special, you know what I mean, that was growing. This was back when analog was still the only video system, so if you got together with some homies to fly, it was analog. No one was getting stomped on by other systems. If somebody went up to fly, there was 3 other people putting their goggles down to watch that person. One of my fondest memories is the first International Open. It was like 2 a.m. It was the finals. There was fog all over the ground, and literally the track was lined with spectators. Everybody had Fat Shark, just white goggles as far as you could see. Everybody was hitting joints, they were slamming beers, you know, goggles down, like tuned into the feed of their favorite pilot. It was just such a surreal experience. Like the way it looked, the feeling, everything, it was cyberpunk as fuck. About a year or so later, HD Zero and DJI came onto the scene, splitting the community into 2 groups. Those that had to have the absolute clearest HD quality video to fly properly, and those who had to have the absolute lowest latency to fly properly. I started off being an analog guy, you know what I mean? So I was like, why should I switch to any of this? I can see just fine, I get fine penetration, I can long range, this truck is loud. Why would I switch to a more expensive flight system just for slightly better video, right? Well, I lived that life for about a year while I built up my Patreon, I did some traveling, and also started dropping sponsors. I had amassed quite a few at this point, like 5 or 6 different sponsors. I think political identity is fucking stupid, but I think I closest identify to anarchist, and not like, oh, chaos, fire, anarchy, man, not that fucking dumb shit, but legit like 1800s commune style anarchism. I'm not gonna go into that here, but you can look it up if you want. So I just felt kind of goofy promoting these like multi-million-dollar companies and their products, you know what I mean, while I was just getting a little 5% commission or a free product. Not that I didn't appreciate it, right? I really appreciated all the free stuff these companies were sending me, but it's really not in my nature to be a so-called influencer and try to convince other people to buy stuff. That's why I don't really do many reviews. Like if I see something cool like the HD0 monitor, I was like, yeah, this is cool, I'll make a video on this. But you know, some random bullshit that comes out, I'm not making a review. I don't care what you fly, just I want you to have fun, you know? And that's why I don't use affiliate links or really recommend anything that's not my own products. It's just not me. I don't care about the money. I don't really care what you buy. I want you to buy good stuff, you know what I mean? I do care what you use because I want you to use good stuff, but outside of that, I don't give a shit. Let's yada yada. Over a couple years, I just made videos, I made vlogs and stuff. But during this time, I really started questioning like what I was doing, and more specifically, what my content is. Am I a vlogger? Am I a reviewer? Am I a how-to guy? I also like building, you know, goofy drone contraptions. I experimented with a few styles. I made a lot of videos with the homies, but I realized I was heavily relying on them to be on camera all day and be funny when they just wanted to show up to the parking lot and fly drones with their friends as a hobby. It took me an embarrassing long time to realize this, but I feel like I was kind of just using my homies for content and not hanging out with them and then just going home. I think Drone Soccer was the video that made me realize this. I could tell the crew really just wasn't having that good of a time. They just wanted to fly quads. I was stressing about making the stupid video. After that, I took a step back and I kind of just third-personed my life. I wasn't filming myself having a fun day with the homies. I was forcing it. I know a lot of you stopped watching my videos regularly after this, and I don't blame you. It did get kind of stale. Nothing was new, nothing was exciting. I was just kind of like going through the motions of making a weekly video. My videos consisted of me going to an office park, flying freestyle, and saying fuck 12 times. But I'm glad that happened, and I'm glad I have enough self-awareness to be proactive about things like that and kind of like analyze what I'm doing. After that, I started doing a lot more of the solo whoop adventures. I did my first essay video and just a lot more fun, goofy builds, just whatever that I wanted to do. But the most important thing was I was having fun again making videos, and I think that y'all could tell that. The passion was back. It wasn't just a job that I had to get over with so I could go do something else. It was the thing that I enjoyed again. To be honest, I still have days where I'm not like super stoked on the video that I have planned. I do one every week, so it is a little hard to come up with like super interesting videos every single week. So sometimes I won't be that stoked, but I'll be like, yeah, let's just film it and see what happens. You know what I mean? I have those days. I have days where I'd rather just like play video games or go ride my bike around all day. I don't want to film and edit inside when it's like nice out. But as a lifelong service industry employee, all I have to do is remember what that life was like, and that is plenty of motivation to get out, rewrite a script, think of a new video, film shit, whatever. And that brings us to today. I still have no clue what I'm doing. I have no idea what video I'm making next week. I still don't know how RPM filters work or what they even are. I just like flying quads and making videos about it, and I'm lucky enough that enough of you enjoy them to hit up my Patreon. When I say I literally couldn't do this without y'all, I mean that. I've gotten a lot of shit from people over the years from this community, from people that assume they know who I am just from watching my videos or based on my appearance or the way I talk or whatever. But the amount of people that have reached out to me saying, you know, they have a similar life story or they're inspired by my perseverance of staying clean, it's pretty freaking meaningful, man. Like, I do question my videos because, you know, I think you have to have that sort of self-awareness. So for those of you that hit me up and tell me you fuck with me, I really appreciate it, homies. And to those of you straight up soldiers that have hit me up telling me, you know, you've been clean for a couple years now, you've been clean for a long time, you've been clean fucking 2 days. Y'all are the reason that I'm still clean. You know that? Like, I have pretty good fucking willpower, but the amount of people that are like, yo, I find inspiration in your cleanliness, I'm also clean off drugs. Like, we're each other's accountability partners, you know? Since finding FPV, I've quit all drugs. I've been sober from alcohol for like 5 years. I quit smoking cigarettes. I still vape. I smoke weed and I eat some mushrooms now and then when I want to get my head right. And I really do attribute that to this whole fucking FPV thing, you know what I mean? Like, I stopped drinking because I was like, it sucks being hungover and trying to edit a video or trying to go to the park and fly drones with my friends. Like, I'd rather not drink and go have fun flying drones. It changed my life for real. And the fact that there's a ton of you that it has impacted in the same way and hit me up and let me know that, like, that's pretty special, man. So knowing all of this, to answer the question, what have I learned? 8 years in FPV, everything. I just noticed as I sat down to edit this video, I'm at 10,995 subscribers.